What makes special teams so special? Well, good players, good scheme, and those that are willing to push the rules to their limits. One of those men that push the envelope and is still a huge part of special teams in the NFL is Gary Zauner. Gary joins the podcast today to talk his journey into being the godfather of specialists, how new rules are changing the game, and so much more here on Scouting the League. Everyone, and welcome to Scouting the League. Excited for our conversation with Gary Zauner and all he has done for special teams in the NFL. And we will get to it in just a moment. But before we do, make sure you head over, like, subscribe, and share this podcast wherever you are listening and watching, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or that video portion over on YouTube. Hit those buttons. Most importantly, share this one with a friend. We want to get the word out there as we peel the curtain back on all things football, scouting, agents, coaching, a little bit of everything from inside the world of scouting, where we don't just say things for clickbait, but actually bring you the real story. I am Rodrik David at Right Step ADV on X is where you can find me. 6 years with the Atlanta Falcons, 1 year with the Tennessee Titans, time in college, time in pro, time doing all things scouting as I go through my journey. Neil Stratton, of course, is along for the ride. He is at Inside the League on X. RSAfootball.com is my website where you can read all about me. And for Neil, InsideTheLeague.com is his website. Make sure you go check both of those out. And while you're at it, check out the Scouting Community. Whether you are a scout or aspiring scout, we got something for you. The unofficial union for NFL scouts that we are working to make the world better for you. Resources, data, information, helping you in every way we can. And for aspiring scouts, helping answer the questions that will get you into an NFL building someday. All of it is over at thescoutingcommunity.com. And check out our partner over there as well, bluemaca.com. Stuart Jenkins, CEO, CFO, Chief Innovation Officer as well, making those insoles that will improve performance just by slipping them into your shoes. Use code SCOUTING20 at checkout for that discount and let them know that we sent you. But enough of all of that. Gary Zauner, Coach Zauner, CoachZauner.com, CoachZaunersLockerRoom.com. You can find him any of those spots. Coaching the college ranks at BYU, San Diego State, New Mexico, and Long Beach State before he made that jump into the NFL, where he spent time with the Vikings, Ravens, and Cardinals. And if you have a specialist on your team, there is a high likelihood that they probably went through one of Coach Zauner's camp at some point. Listed as a consultant for the Eagles, Browns, Chargers, 49ers, Bears, Chiefs, Seahawks, Giants, all of that time leading up to his NFL time. He has a huge impact on all things special teams. So with that, let's get into it with Coach Zauner. Well, I am excited to welcome you in. Coach Zauner, welcome to Scouting the League.
Welcome. I'm proud to be here, guys.
There are a few names that again float around the NFL, and whether you have ever gotten to work with Coach Zauner or one of his guys, the name. There are when it comes to specialists, there are few people that know them inside and outside as well as you do. Obviously, you have you've got your website with CoachZauner.com, CoachZaunersLockerRoom.com. You are one of the premier special teams guys, but your football background hasn't always been just special teams. You've done some evaluation. You've been at the college level, the pro level. Why don't you talk about, again, getting into the game of football and kind of what led to being one of the special teams guys over the years?
Well, this might be a little boring for you, but when I was a little kid, the Ford punt, pass, and kick contest.
Yes.
I was all about being the best, whatever I was going to be, and I always loved getting ready for those events. Now, I never got to the stadium, but I was pretty damn good. And as I became a high school athlete, a punter, well, I was a quarterback and a shortstop and a guard. But I also punted and kicked because I was pretty good at it because of Fort punt, pass, and kick. But as I got in high school, my head coach never let me kick a field goal, which really pissed me off. Excuse me. And as I got older and I became a high school coach, I said, why would you not take advantage of a good kicker? Now, I always knew I was the best punter and kicker I could be when I had a great snapper. So as a young coach, the vital man in my kicking game has been the long snapper. And in the last 18 years, I have 38 in the NFL, or I've had 38. But as growing up, my whole thing was I'm going to spend a third of my time on special teams. And really, I was never a head coach in high school, but I still got inducted to the Wisconsin Football Coaches Hall of Fame in 2013 because all the coaches realized what I did around the state. Right. But as I went through the whole thing and tried to get from high school to college, I hope this isn't boring for you, but I wanted to be a college coach. Well, I want to be an NFL coach, but you first had to be a college coach. So I sent about 130 letters out to every Division I school, and I got 120 no's. So I sent out another 30, and I got one response from Lavelle Edwards at BYU. And he says, son, everybody on this team gets coached except the three specialists. He said, I'd like to have you come out for an interview. I said, I'll be there. And so even in high school, I always had the all-state kicker and did some things like the field goal return and the longest field goal. But I had a good resume as a high school coach, even though I wasn't the head coach. But anyway, so I go to BYU and I get picked up by this tall guy and he's talking, and it just happened to be Brian Billick. He picked me up and he was a GA. I interview with Lavelle, and Lavelle says, hey, I'd love to have you come back. So I go back in 1979, and we have a pretty good team, and we go to the Holiday Bowl, and we win the Holiday Bowl. And then in 1980, we win the Holiday Bowl with, they call it the Hail Mary pass, when Jim McMahon throws the ball to Clay Brown. But in that game, we had Vicek and him a return and punt. We blocked a punt with 20 seconds, and then we had the Hail Mary pass. So Lavelle was the guy that really gave me my chance. And Brian Billick, who picked me up, eventually brought me to San Diego State, and my roommate happened to be Mike Smith, who eventually became the head coach of Atlanta Falcons. So in a twisted world, Lavelle Edwards, I owe everything to, because he's the guy that got me started. When I was at BYU, Doug Scoville became head coach at San Diego State, and he hired me as the first full-time special teams coach in college history. And Doug did it simply because he was an offensive coordinator at BYU. He had been a special teams coach, and he saw what I did at BYU special teams in the 2 years I was there. And he said, Gary, I don't want you coaching tight ends. You're going to spend all your time. And, man, I caused havoc for guys because I was into blocking punts and doing all kinds of stuff, returning punts, doing all kinds of weird things. I mean, I probably changed 5 rules in the NCAA and probably 3 in the NFL. But I had a passion. And one of the guys that really influenced me on TV was George Allen. And I eventually worked for George later at Long Beach State. But I always looked at George had the first special teams coach. He had the first long snapper. He had the first kickoff return guy. He was the first. And I said, well, if George Allen can do that, maybe if I just focus on one little thing and do it better than anybody, it might get me to the NFL. Yeah. And so sure enough, I did very well at BYU. We did very well at San Diego State. And then I went to New Mexico. And then I was out of coaching and I sold cars. But then Denny Green brought me up because he said Brian Billick said a lot about you and he was going to hire me at Stanford. And then the funny story was he brings me up, he's going to hire me, and 5 days later he gets the head coaching job at the Vikings. I go, oh no, there it goes. I had my real chance to meet with this guy. So I hear that he's going to go to Minnesota. So I get on a plane and I fly up there the next day. I go to his office and he's packing. And I said, Denny, take me. And Denny goes, Gary, I can't. I got to keep this other coach. I said, you got to keep him. He says, yeah, he's on another, and they won't let me fire him, and I got to keep him. I said, huh. So I go back and I said, screw it. I said, I had the chance of my life. I'm going back to my old business of being a kicking consultant, training all these kickers that I was working with in San Diego. Well, I was doing that for 2 years, and all of a sudden, one afternoon, I get a call, and guy says, hey, Gary, what's shaking? And I said, who is this? He says, Denny Green. And he said shaking because we just had an earthquake in San Diego. And he says, yeah, what's shaking? And he says, I said, what do you want, coach? And he says, I want to bring you to Minnesota. And I said, you want to bring me? I says, I've got my other business going. I don't know if I really want to do that. And I said to him, you know, Denny, I'd be foolish not to take this opportunity. But I said, who's going to coach the special teams? Is it going to be you or me, or do I have the ability? He says, Gary, I already know about you from everybody I've talked to. You're a headstrong guy. And I said, well, I really know personnel. And he says, I know that. He says, but I want to tell you one thing. I'm going to give you a lot of, power, access to personnel, but I'm going to make all the final decisions. I said, Coach, that's fine with me. And so I got there, and we got some great picks, and he let me have my guys on special teams, and we had great special teams, and that took me there. And so between knowing Brian Billick, knowing Mike Smith, Denny Green, coaching for George Allen at Long Beach State when I was out of work, it's just all put together. But I always wanted to be with the best, and now I think I'm one of the best, or I hope I'm the best. They call me the guru at times. So that's how I got started.
Just look at your website and look at the names that are coming through and working with you, getting trained up by you. And again, it's fairly easy to see when the best are going to you. Again, I think they say the proof is in the pudding, right? And again, you spent, I believe, 8 years with the Vikings, 4 with the Ravens. You spent 1 year with the Cardinals, and then have consulted and done work with a whole bunch of teams. And the special teams nature of the NFL. Again, it's one of those things that some coaches will say, yeah, it's 1/3 of the game, right? You have offense, defense, and special teams, but the way teams are built, the way practices are structured, for so many people, it is very much, hey, you've got 10 minutes here, you've got 15 minutes there, you need to squeeze something in, you've got your kicker, punter, long snapper, maybe a return special that sticks with you. What about special teams and being a special teams coach and coordinator is so unique and so different than coaching the rest of those guys on offense and defense?
Well, because what you said is it's the third of the game, but all those guys blow hot air about it being the third of the game. It's really, do they really practice it? And still, even though Denny was great for me, still when things would get cut, Gary, can we cut 5 minutes? They never cut back offense or defense. It was always cut this, cut that. But I was always ahead of the game. And I always got guys out early, and the guys knew the passion I had, and having the talent, or having the ability to get talent, having great kickers makes you a really good special teams coach. So when I had Gary Anderson and Mitch Berger and a great snapper, they made me a great coach. Plus I had a great returner in David Palmer. So when you look at it, with the Vikings, we not only had a great offense and defense, but the special teams, we would light them up. And there was no place that they could ever hold back. Now, Denny was great for me. Lavelle Edwards, I still remember in a game, we're playing Texas A&M, and Lavelle, I was the backup special teams coach. She said, Gary, we can't make you the special teams coach. Dick Felt is the defensive coordinator, and he runs the kicking game. But Dick quickly noticed how good I was at it. So we're playing Texas A&M in the opening game, and they're in the top 10, and I'm going, Lavelle, we gotta go for a block punt. He said, I don't know about this. I don't know. He always relied on offense. Lavelle was not big on special teams. But anyways, I said, we're going to go for a block punt. Well, they're beating us 17 to whatever it was. And with 1 minute and 30 seconds, we block a punt. We keep going for it. And Lavelle said, I said, we're testing. I said, this will work. And we block a punt, we beat them, and it's I always had special team shirts for top rock, top block. And Lavelle gets in there and everybody's cheering. He says, give everybody a shirt. No, I don't know if it's legal anymore, but I mean, we had special team shirts, and the kids, when they got the shirt, they wore it with so much pride. And I did that at BYU San Diego. I did that with the Minnesota Vikings. Top Viking, top rock, top block, top Viking. And even though those guys are making all that money, they enjoy the pride of putting on that shirt with everybody else. Now, guys make so much more money. But going back to what I said, Mitch Berger got cut 6 times, and I brought him in, and they all thought I was nuts. And I said, listen, if we got Gary Anderson, we need somebody to kick off. And I said, this kid can punt, hold, and kick off. And if we can do that, and they said, well, he's been cut 6 times. I said, the guy I can coach, and he can, and he's going to learn, and he promised me he's going to work. So after getting cut 6 times, he played 15 years in the league and went to 2 Pro Bowls. Yeah. So with specialists, a lot of times they get misevaluated, and they get evaluated and thrown away. I always like to go and find guys that have what I call NFL potential and then coach them. Yeah. And so I've done that with shit. I was one of the only guys. Terrell Davis was a guy that slipped through the fingers. You guys all know Terrell Davis, but he was at Long Beach State with us, and then he went to Georgia, and he was a backup running back. And I told Denny Green, I says, hey, if this guy, he's with the Denver Broncos, if he doesn't make it, Coach, we got to get this guy. And so we tried to pick him up, and Denny says he's no longer a secret. I said, I know. I saw the preseason game. He ran for 150 yards in the second half. So, yeah, it was interesting. But guys, I think I got a little suntan lotion in my eye here. But just hold on. So, yeah, I was out. It's actually 80. It's 80 degrees here.
Oh man, well, we've had plenty of 80 here in Houston, so I'll let you have that, Gary. Coach, as you've told us about your story and kind of how you got started, you've named a lot of men of the game who everyone automatically recognizes. And it's one thing to meet those people, but you've made those people pivotal parts of your story and your climb as you've kind of come through the game. Did you do anything special to try to really reinforce those relationships to make those lasting, or or was it kind of a situation where they were just there and everything kind of happened organically and one thing led to another?
Well, I guess, when you put as much time as I did into recruiting some of those guys, I mean, Robert Griffith was another kid that played at San Diego State. I tried to recruit him when I was at New Mexico, and he went to San Diego State where I had been. And we played him in the last game, New Mexico against San Diego State. And after the game, I said, Robert, hey, you had a great season. I said, but someday you're going to play for me. And he goes, Coach, I only got 4 more games. I said, Robert, I said, someday you're going to play for me. So the next year, I get the call from Denny. I get the job. The first guy I call is Robert Griffith. And I bring him in. And Scott Studwell says, Gary, why do we get this guy? He's a reject. He said, hey, he's a reject for you, but he's going to be a player for me. He's going to be a Pro Bowl special teams guy. So Denny listens to me, brings him in, and he's a Pro Bowl special teams guy, and the safety gets hurt. Robert goes in, plays for 13 years and 2 Pro Bowls. And I still have a relationship. I still get calls. I get messages from him. The one guy that really I put a lot of time into was Tillman, Pat Tillman. Mm-hmm. I knew he was the next Robert Griffith. And I recruited that guy, and I wanted him. And he said, Coach, I want to play for you. He says, nobody's recruiting me. So when we got to the draft, they said, well, we'll take him in the 7th round with a compensatory pick. And I said, he won't be there. I said, the Cardinals will take him, and they got all these extra picks. But anyways, Pat Tillman, I was the only guy to work him out twice and do all kinds of things. And I just knew the passion that kid had. And the passion he took there to the military, and he got killed. I still, you can say I get emotional about him. So I love the guys that recruit.
Yeah,
Sure.
and that's the one of the unique things about the game of football is the emotion, and it has to be arguably to be one of those top special teams guys. Again, maybe a coverage guy, a top return guy. That's just a different position. The nature of it, where you get three, four, maybe five chances per game to showcase what you can do. So there is every snap is highlighted, is under a magnifying glass. So it takes a different type of person and personality to thrive and live in that role. And I think you absolutely see it with kickers, having it between the ears, having that mental strength. Obviously, for a guy like Pat Tillman, again, just a different type of human being all around to do what he did. And for NFL scouts, that is such a hard thing to evaluate, the way that these guys come through their college programs, trying to get sources, trying to figure out what makes these guys tick when they are, again, at the college level. It's just the same. Again, sometimes peripheral to the football team. What do you see with some of these guys that make it? These guys that, again, go through some adversity, that find a way to make it, kicker, punter, long snapper, special teams coverage guys. What do they have special about them that, hey, if you could tell a scout, like, if you find these one or two things, they're going to have make it qualities?
Well, I'll tell you, as a young coach, I coached every sport. I coached track. I coached everything in high school. I played baseball, basketball, football. I think the real art of finding talent is, an athlete. And then you got to put them in the right position. So with Pat Tillman and Robert Griffith, see, they were, I call them bastard linebackers, but they were really safeties. They were undersized linebackers. But like that story about Pat Tillman, I was talking to Pat and whatever, and I said something about the playbook, and he says, yeah, and I gave it back to him. And I said, guys, that's weird. Why would you give the playbook back to the coach? Are you not coachable? He said, Coach, I read it in 2 days. I memorized it and gave it back to the staff. I didn't want to carry it around. So I'm going like, well, maybe this guy's a little smarter than I think. But all those guys, I think every coach, high school, puts a kid where he should be. And a lot of times later on, that's why colleges might take 5 quarterbacks, and then eventually 3 of them end up to be wide receivers. I was really good at finding guys that were explosive, because explosive guys are going to play on special teams, right? I don't know if they were going to be the starting guys, but every coach I had always gave me 3 or 4 or 5 guys for special teams. And Pat and Robert fit into that. They got in, and once they started playing, they were coaches on, really smart kids, coaches on the field. They made their way. Now, kicking and punting and snapping is a little different. But when I got a call in 2021, and this kid calls me up, he says, Coach, I hear you're the guy to see to get to the NFL. And I go, well, son, I am if you're good. And I said, what's your background? He said, well, I never played high school or college football, but I've been playing soccer. And I said, really? Well, you can come out. But his name's Brandon Aubrey. Have you ever heard of the guy?
Yeah, he's doing all right now.
He's doing all right. And so it took him 2 years to get him, because the NFL they couldn't justify, the special teams coach, when they went to the owners or managers, they couldn't justify putting this guy in. What do you mean he never played high school or college? How could the guy be good? Well, Gary says he's pretty good. Well, forget Gary. I mean, I can't go to the owner and say we're bringing in a soccer player. Well, he went to the UFL, the USFL, then the UFL. And then my old assistant, John Fossil, calls me and he says, Gary, our man, Henry Soroka, really likes the guy that you recommended. I said, John, you would be crazy not to bring this guy in. And so they brought him in, and he is who he is today. I mean, he is one heck of a kicker. So, but that's what I'm saying. In any position, you got to go to management, right? And you put a guy up on the board, and you go like, is this guy good enough? I mean, I got myself in trouble with the Ravens when I first got there. Brian brought me there. They gutted after the Super Bowl, they gutted their team. And they brought me in because Brian says, Gary, we're going to go back to blocking punts. We gutted the team. We're going to go back to blocking punts, doing all that crazy shit. And so I went out looking for a return guy. And so, Ozzie Newsome and all the guys on the Ravens are known for, personnel. So I went out looking. I went looking out for a return guy, and I come back and I said, I got a guy, Brian. And then we're in the personnel meetings, and they're going, we got our guy. We're going to draft you a guy. I says, I looked at that guy. He's not that. He drafted him. He's your guy. So I go back in. I call the guy, and I said, there's nothing I can do. I go back into the draft room, and I said, guys, the running back coach says, Gary, I'll give you one of my spots. So B.J. Sams, with a little kid out someplace, I forget where it was. We bring him in, and Ozzie says, Gary, you can have him. As I'm walking out, he says, Gary, if that guy's our return man, the opening day, I'll give you $2,000. I go back, get a piece of paper. I said, write that down, Ozzie. So we bring him in. We go to camp. Make a long story short, he's impressing everybody. I mean, Ray Lewis comes. He said, Coach, where'd you get this guy from? Well, we go to training camp, and in the first week, Terrell Suggs grabs him, throws it on, breaks his thumb. So Ozzie comes walking across the field, and he's got a big smile. He says, well, I guess I won. I says, no, you didn't win. The ball's in your court. And so the trainer said that he could fix the thumb, so he fixed it. He didn't play in the next two preseason games. So anyways, it's the last preseason game against the Detroit Lions, and they were going to put him on one of the injured reserve squads or whatever. And I said, Brian, we can't do this. And Brian said, well, Gary, look, I said, let him play the last game. And if he doesn't do it, then we can put him in injured reserve or whatever you want to do with him. So we're playing the Detroit Lions. First punt, guy hits it. He picks it up, goes 85 yards for a touchdown. I go, I guess I got the money. Yeah. And so, but what you're saying about that B.J. Sams kid impressed the hell out of me. He was so quick. And I looked at him and said, this is what the system he would fit in. And so you guys know, you go out and you look at a tight end sometimes and you say, well, maybe he was a quarterback. He can't play quarterback, so work. He's an athlete, so put him someplace. And he can catch the ball and he can run. How can he block? So anyways, I think that's the real art of you guys being in personnel. I just was really good at it, and I made a name for myself with it, and I hopefully put them in the right place. And when I was at the Ravens and we brought in this kid, we drafted Ed Reed. I looked at Ed Reed, and man, he was smooth as silk. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, who will return guys? And Ed raised a hand. I says, okay. And Ed was catching balls. I said, he's pretty good, but he's going to be a better punt blocker. And so I put him up. He says, Coach, how am I going to return a punt from a 3-point stance? I said, you're going to go in, block it, pick it up, and run it in. We blocked 8 punts that first year I was there, and Ed blocked 5 and ran back 3.
Yeah.
So, but he was still, look at the athlete he was, and he's a Hall of Famer. But I said, he was just, when guys would line up against Ed, they go, uh-oh. But putting him in the right place.
Yeah. Coach, when it comes to blocking punts, is it about scheme or is it about the players that are on the unit?
Both. I would always look at the weakest guy on the squad, and then I would put my best guy against that guy. Now, with Ed, we would switch him from side to side, but we had a couple techniques with a couple other guys that we'd go up and grab the shoulder so the inside guy couldn't help. We always tried to put that wing back out on an island. Yep. And even on the inside, I had Adelius Thomas. And if you remember Adelius Thomas, he was about 6'5", 270, could run a 4.5. Well, the opening game against the Steelers, I didn't show this, but in the opening game against the Steelers, he's a gunner. And in the first game, he comes out on the outside, and these two little DBs are there. What are you doing here? And he ended up to be a Pro Bowl guy. But I put him out there because not two guys could block him, being as big as he was. So, again, placing guys in the right spot. But Adelius Thomas, Ed Reed, B.J. Sams, those guys made big plays, and they made me a good coach.
Yeah, Well, good coaches in the NFL right now are, I would say, probably still trying to find what the answer is to all these new special teams rules. Really, speaking most specifically to kickoff and kickoff return. What are your thoughts on the rules, the new rules, really forcing teams to, put the ball in play, to have a kick return, and kind of how do you view teams adjusting to it, and who's doing a good job, who's not? Where do you see the kickoff return going?
Well, I hate the kickoff rule, real simply. I think it breeds probably. I always say, would you ask a golfer to shank a ball? And so by putting the ball in the 35, they're telling guys to miss hit balls and try to get it in the zone and roll it in. Well, with that's all shit. If you have to practice that twice a week, then you're saying, why are kickers missing kicks? To me, like I said, it goes with golf. To me, it's about excellence. And remember when we grew up, the most exciting play in football is the kickoff return, opening with a kickoff return or, blocking a punt. I was the first guy to do the field goal return in college and the NFL. And so I just think that I like the rule of moving the guys up, okay, to eliminate collisions and injuries. I just told them I would move the ball back to the 30 so the kicker every time has to hit a regular good ball. Because it doesn't matter where you kick from. It's just putting on 35. They're doing two-step kickoffs. So I would still put it back at 30, let them kick it, whatever it is. The ball, when it gets touched, you go down there, and they can keep those guys there to eliminate that. But I don't like the slapping the ball down there. It doesn't breed perfection. Now that's the kickoff rule. What other rule would you want to be specific on?
Again, is if you watch football, you watch the games, there are teams that look like they, again, as it has always been, teams that, hey, we're going to try to make this a play that we can gain an advantage. 10 yards is a first down. Who are the teams that you think are on the kickoff return side, like, hey, we're really spending time on this, doing a good job, and actually making it a positive for the team? And how are they doing that?
Well, I haven't really watched it that closely because, again, it's all, like you said, they catch it and let's see now, they get it out to the 29 or 30 or 32. I mean, you have collisions, but again, what's the premium? If you kick it in the end zone, it comes to the 35. Yeah. So you got all those collisions going. I said, eventually with the stupid rule, they're going to be like basketball. Each guy gets an opening kickoff here and there and everything else. You might as well just bring it to the 35, which would be sad, and I'd hate to have football end up to be like basketball because, like you said, it's a part of the game. Anytime anything gets real good, guys were kicking the ball out of the end zone, like my guys, Mitch Berger, then they moved him back to the 30. Then they wanted more returns. I said they never can make up their mind what they want. Eventually, they're going to take the field goal out of the game. I said, well, shit, if you're kicking 60-yard field goals, maybe you give them 4 points. Yeah. I think one of the rules that they haven't explored is you can't win a game in the last 2 minutes with a field goal.
There we go.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Well, I just think that they're saying, they run the clock down, and it all comes down to whatever. If you wanna make it a man's game, then just say, okay, you can't run it down and kick a field goal. You got to win with a touchdown in the last 2 minutes. And I think that would really make teams wonder what they're doing on kickoffs and doing this. Because see, now they kick off and they get 3 plays and boom, they can kick. Yeah. They can come back and kick a field goal. And Brandon Aubrey just missed one the other day. I think he aimed down the middle, but I always told him, I said, aim at the right upright so you got 6 yards of miss left. But I mean, he kicked it long enough. I mean, this Cam Little kid, is got an unbelievable leg, and so. But look at it, guys could win a game like that with the last second kick. So I would like to see them explore that rule, or at least that idea.
Well, while we're on the Cam Little, go ahead, Neil.
Well, before we got started, sorry about that, Rodrik. We were all kind of talking about a recent kick of 68 yards. 50-yard field goals are almost automatic now. Are we going to see a 70-yard field goal? How far away is that?
Next week? Yeah, really. Whatever. Well,
Yeah, talk
again,
about Gary. Talk about obviously the balls are just flying this year. We've seen multiple 60-yarders, and there is a rule change that has lent itself to these guys booming the balls. It's again easier to kick it deep. Talk about that rule change, and again whether you like it or again we know that you dislike it. Talk about that the change there.
right. And again, back when I had Gary Anderson, he had a perfect season. They took away, I call it the ego ball, and they changed it to the NFL kicking ball because again, Gary Anderson had a perfect season. Mitch Berger had all kinds of touchbacks, and they wanted to keep the ball in play, so they went to the NFL, K ball. Now they changed it to open season on the balls. I mean, they're working them in, and those balls are like 2 months old. And you can do that, if you got the right guys working them in. So the balls this year are nothing like they have been probably in the last 15, 18, 20 years. And so they with that rule, they opened up a new can of worms, and there'll be a 70-yard field goal because I've coached Janikowski, I coached Brandon McManus. They got big legs. I've coached all kinds of guys. But, Cam Little, Brandon Aubrey, all those guys, they got big legs. And somebody's going to do it. But you'd eliminate them from doing it if you went to that 2-minute rule. They couldn't win with an 80-yard field goal. So you're only going to kick that ball before halftime. Just like with the field goal return, you only run the field goal return maybe once or twice in a game. And you usually run it before half or at the end of the game. Now, when we ran our first one against the Broncos on Monday Night Football, 107 yards with McAllister, it was 3 seconds, Jason Meal, and we had the play. I said, run it. And they ran it, and boom. And then, Hester broke all those records, and you saw it in college with Alabama against Auburn. They ran it. Mm-hmm. But again, with the field goal, now, if you're going to kick those long field goals, you better go over field goal coverage because if you got the defense in there or you got a field goal return set up, it's going to be like that when you're kicking those long balls, or at least better get out of the end zone someplace because, I think it was still, if guys look at it, it's going to be a big play. Now, the Cowboys, when they ran it, the other team had a guy under the crossbar. But it was far enough, it just missed it to the left. But I would say if you're a good special teams coach and you know the kickers are going to kick long ones, I would get ready to run that thing back. But the one thing is if it's earlier in the game and it's short, then there's no reason to run it back because you're going to get it on the 50. And in 2 plays, you can kick a field goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gary, the other play that again is constantly being talked about, it's a low percentage, but again can change games, is that onside kick rule. There are more and more people, hey, let's give offenses it's a 1 play 4th and 15 if you want to onside it.
Hold it. What onside? Excuse me, we're going to onside kick. You got to raise your hand now to call an onside kick. So what happened? The surprise or whatever. It's again, they make up the craziest rules. But they took out the onside kick or the surprise ons or any positional kick that you wanted to do to pin teams in. So they just really condensed the whole thing. I think it's easier for the coaches to coach that now because there is nothing. The only time you do it is when you raise your hand and say we're going to do an onside kick. So there is no surprise. And then you how many have you seen do an onside kick yet? I think I've seen 2 or 3 last year.
Not many. Not many this
and then
year,
you don't
college level. I mean, it is the, from your standpoint, can you coach a guy to be really, really good kicking the ball and getting it where you want it to go as an onside kick?
Oh yeah. I did it all the time with my guys. We had 3 different onside kicks. We did it against Green Bay. We call it the triple option. We were down 28-0 against Green Bay, and we came up with the triple option. And so we set it up, and they came up, and we kicked it deep. And then they fumbled the ball, and all of a sudden it was 28-7, 28-14. and we screwed them up by looking like we were going to do it, but we kicked it deep, and they were all up here, so we nailed them inside. Then eventually, when we ran it, we got a good look at it, and then when we ran it, we recovered it. But I always had one in the middle, one to the right, one to the left, and so in today's world now, you can't block the guys. Now, when I was a coach, I studied how guys recovered it, and so I was the first guy to put just you 5 or 6 guys. When they kick it, you just go get them, because if you wait, you're going to get blown up. Right? Do you remember those days? I'd be waiting like this. Well, I put Randy Moss and Chris Carter to catch it over here. And I said, guys, we don't let anybody touch Randy Moss and Chris Carter. And I told Randy, I said, Randy, you just get it and knock it out of bounds. So it's a play, I think it's a play that won't be used very often, but it could be used, but I just don't like the couple rules now that they have. But
they've certainly tried to downplay what special teams means to the NFL. And again, it makes the spotlight on those guys when they do get their chance even brighter, but taking out a huge aspect of the game. And again, to the detriment of a lot of these guys. I mean, guys that make rosters used to make it because of that special teams value, because of their core 4 ability. And again, man, some of those guys, because of the nature of special teams, it's certainly changed. You got more speed guys, you got less of those bigs. And then, man, there's some of those head scratching times with the onside kick. It looks like teams have probably lined up at their Friday walkthrough, talked about it, and never practiced it once, because again, they look lost out there. I believe it may have been the Vanderbilt game against Texas, where I think Vanderbilt had about 3 chances at it. Texas had about 3 chances, and the ball was still spinning there out of bounds as somebody landed on it. And again, a play that, again, you used to have to be highly detailed with your execution. Again, if you can just, get through it somehow, I think that seems to be enough.
Well, number one, that guy shouldn't have dove. I always tell guys, you never dive at anything. Matter of fact, if he would have been back a little further, he would have saw it coming and it would have went right out of bounds. But then when he dives on it and it squirts out the other side, now it's a free-for-all. When I saw that ball, I go, oh, my God.
Yeah.
And so the idea was to keep the ball in play. For the coverage team, the receiving team, the idea was get the ball, knock it out of bounds, But anyways, but that was an interesting game at the end. Hey guys, one thing I know we might be running out of time, but the vital man in your kicking game, you know who that is? The long snapper. And ever since I was a young kid, that guy always intrigued me. And first guy I would always get as a coach would be the long snapper. And like I said, George Allen was one of the first guys that had the first long snapper, because everybody else was a position player that could long snap. And I fought for the NFL Combine to bring a long snapper, because if you guys remember, that one weight coach used to come out and snap to the specialist.
Yeah.
So I put a petition, all the coaches signed. We had two long snappers there back. I forget when it was, back when I was coaching. But then the Pro Bowl. I said, what do you mean? We go to the Pro Bowl? We got Pro Bowl kickers. We don't have a Pro Bowl snapper. So I got that in and got those guys to vote. We had Wesley Walls, and he was a good tight end. But through my career, I've always said the vital man in your kicking is long snapper. Now, if you really watch, and most of the guys that have good kickers I've coached, because I teach them the art of snapping perfect laces. So in other words, snap down, not like that Jesse Ventura movie, Laces Out. Or remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
But I'm just saying, when you look at the best kickers, and Justin Tucker had 3 of my snappers. He had Morgan Cox. He had just recently Rick Moore and Tyler Ott. All those guys, no matter what they say, I always taught every guy that came through my system the art of snapping perfect laces. And so with Gary Anderson, when I went to Baltimore with Matt Stover, when I came here to the Arizona Cardinals, Neil Rackers, who were a Pro Bowl kicker, they're good kickers, but it all comes down with the snap and the hold. And if you watch college and NFL football right now, when you see some of the guys miss and they got laces in their face or whatever, I always go like, I didn't coach that guy. I didn't coach that guy. But if you watch some of these guys now, man, they are so good at hitting it, putting it down. And that's why I think that's taken the whole game with the kicking game to the next level, is because of the long snapper. And now every team has it. And way back when, not many teams had it because they didn't want to give that one spot. When I went to the Vikings as a player, I went in and it was Mick Tinglehoff was my snapper and Paul Krause was my holder. And I'm getting ready to kick, and Mick going, "Hey, Paul, where are the laces coming out?" And he goes, quarter turn. He goes, move. And so when I go they signed me after I did very well in the trial, punting and kicking. I go to camp and I go, "Hey, Mick, how do you do that with the laces, man? That's unbelievable." He said, "Well, you just got to get the laces at a certain distance, and as long as Paul catches at the right distance, boom." And so ever since I learned that from Mick Tinglehoff, I've got a website called perfectlaces.com. And I talk about the art of learning how to snap perfect laces, which I learned from Mick Tinglehoff. And I've passed on through all my camps and clinics. And if you go to my website, and when guys come in, I tell them, you got to learn the art of snapping perfect laces, because when a coach sees that, he goes, "Oh my God." But more importantly, when the kicker sees that, he goes, "Man, coach, let's get that snapper." Because kickers don't care about the punch snap or the blocking. All they care about is how good the guy hits those laces, and they get a nice long look to kick it. So, but I had to get that in about the vital man in your kicking game.
Yeah, no question. Well, thankfully, I was a part of a pretty good group for most of my time in Atlanta. We had Josh Harris, who was very good there. Matt Bryan, of course, a great kicker for us. Josh Harris did a good job, and I learned my special teams from Keith Armstrong, who was, again, one of the best in the business for a long time. And again, it was always a huge part of what our scouting reports were. Everything we did, and again, hopefully we see it reintegrated into the game more than it goes the other way. Because again, the kicks, they're getting further, the expectation is higher, but again, somehow they're still finding ways to minimize it. And it's again, it'll always, some of the most iconic plays in both college and NFL history happen on special teams. It's a big part of the game. And Gary, you've been a big part of it. Again, you rattled off about half those big plays that have happened, both college, NFL, some of the biggest names in the game. You've changed special teams, and again, still doing it, still affecting the game, helping these guys, which is awesome because it is a big part of the game. All of that, again, over at CoachZauner.com, CoachZaunersLockerRoom.com. I believe you're on social media at Coach Zauner. It's nice and easy. A fairly unique name means you can go with one thing and really have it out there, right?
That's it. And so, yeah, CoachZauner.com. And so, Instagram and all that stuff is really also, giving great kudos to, you see all these kicks. I mean, you see them in a minute or two after they happen. And so I didn't know about the Cam Little kick, and all of a sudden somebody sends me a deal and says, "Look at," and I go, "Oh shit!" And I thought that was it during preseason. No, he just kicked it. So yeah, social media has been great for guys like me. And so right now there's a lot of kicking camps and kicking coaches around the world and around the country here, and they all do a great job. And so at 75, I put in my time, and so I just try to help as many kids as I can.
Good, but we appreciate you being on. You're helping us. You're helping the scouting world, and we appreciate it. And whatever comes up next, whichever guys, I'm sure there's going to be some coaches calling you, scouts calling you through the process, and we know you'll be helping out. We really, really appreciate you being on with us today.
Yeah. Well, the College Senior Combine I run in February 14 to 15. I always give all that information to the NFL coaches, and then I run a free agent combine in March. And like last year, the New York Jets got one of their guys, and that's how Aubrey got in, and a bunch of snappers have gotten in the league. But yeah, I try to do those two leagues to help the scouts, or basically the NFL special teams coach. And most important, I always say, to get the NFL exposure you want, need, and deserve, come to Coach Zauner's combines. And so
Yeah.
hopefully it's going to help another young man soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a great wrap to it. Coach, we appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Coach.
Agents, before we go, make sure you go check out Agent Live 360. It is at agentlive360.com for everything you need for your agency, from players to coaches, managing profiles, tracking invoices, sending invoices, getting paid, keeping up on every element of your entire agency. Notification emails, file folder storage, ROI, transactions, invoices, calendar, contracts, teams, reps, everything all in one spot for you. That is Agent Live 360. Hop on, request a demo. Yours truly will hop on, walk you through it. I can promise you we will talk some football as well. Sign up now with code TRIAL90 for a 90-day, 3-month trial at just $10 a month for Agent Live 360. That's at agentlive360.com. Go check it out now.